This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. The race for fifth place or the race for third or even second place. Nottingham Forest with a huge win over Manchester City. Gibbs White fizzed past to Hudson-Odoi was a joy. Nuno's smile is getting wider and wider. At Old Trafford, Manchester United might have been the better side in a football match. Extraordinary. A draw with Arsenal, for whom David Raya made some great saves. We'll cover the protests off the pitch as well. So Liverpool are now 15 points clear at the top after coming from behind to beat Southampton. Elsewhere, Bournemouth somehow failed to win at Spurs despite dominating. Cole Palmer stutters, but Chelsea still win. And there's a huge win for Brighton over Fulham. Hopefully there's enough time to talk about Adam Wharton's left foot. Remember Wolves, Everton. Answer your questions. And that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
And Nooruddean Choudry, hello.
Hello.
And welcome, Johnny Liew.
Hi.
Let's start at the City Ground then. Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester City 0. This was it wasn't a brilliant game, I didn't think, Johnny, but just such an amazing moment when, the goal, the pass from Gibbs White was wonderful, but that moment and that City Ground just erupting was brilliant.
Yeah, that was possibly the moment of the weekend, to be honest. The pass, it's just one of those where you want to watch a YouTube video titled something like Gibbs White pass from every possible angle. Maybe set to music, just the trajectory, the swerve, and then he's got options. He's got options in the centre, isn't he? But he just, like Hudson-Odoi, just decides to go himself. Can Ederson do a little bit better at his near post there? Not sure. It's one of those moments where I think everyone there just thinks, this is on, isn't it? This is actually going to happen. It's not, obviously we're not talking Leicester levels, but just the sense that this is a giddy ride that is just not going to run out of steam anytime soon. I don't think we, as a society, as a sports, as a podcast, are remotely ready for the outpouring of content and nauseating saccharine that is going to accompany Nottingham Forest in the Champions League. There's going to be retrospectives, there's going to be interviews, there's going to be lots of plucky little underdog tales, which, given the amount of money they spent, might be worth unpacking a little bit. But it's coming.
Yeah, I must admit, I see myself on the cynical side of football journalism. But I think I'm ready for a bit of saccharine nostalgia from Nottingham Forest, talking about old European Cups, Baz. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah. There were probably a lot of football fans who aren't aware that they won 2 European Cups.
They're shy about it. They don't like talking about it.
And we have already had the saccharine sweet guff when they got promoted. So, in a way, we know what's coming, and it's fine, because I'm quite partial to a bit of Nottingham Forest. I was always a big Brian Clough fan. They're certainly not going away. I didn't think they'd win this game, if I'm honest, but I think they were worthy winners. The first half was pretty dull and uneventful, and then Ederson was called upon to make a brilliant save from Callum Hudson-Odoi, and then didn't make a brilliant save from Callum Hudson-Odoi. I think he's been hung out to dry a little bit, because the shot did take a bit of a nick off Gvardiol, which I think bamboozled him slightly. But this was a brilliant performance by Forest, with its foundations in yet another really good defensive display by Olena, Morello, Milenkovic and Nico Williams, who have, apart from the odd exception, been brilliant this season. You know what you're going to get from Forest, but very few teams seem able to stop what they know is coming. And that pass from Gibbs White was, I can only agree, was fantastic. The speed of it, the precision, and apparently it's something he and Callum Hudson-Odoi had planned in advance. So fair play to them.
It's interesting, that point, Nos, from Baz saying, you know what's coming, but they can't stop it, because there are other football teams in the Premier League where you know what's coming, and that is a problem, because you know what's coming, and we'll get to Manchester United and Tottenham and the teams we talk about a lot with that, but that's actually what Nuno has managed to create there is And he looks so happy now. You know, he's gone on a narrative arc on this pod from dying Jedi to now the sort of happiest man on earth. But like, it's hard to underestimate how much credit you should give to him.
Oh, completely. And but it's that thing of it's not enough just to have like a low block and aim to be a counter-attacking team. Like loads of teams want to do that. Loads of teams that come up want to do that. Ten Hag was massive on sort of. He continually said, we've not got the right players to play actual football. So what we'll do is we'll become the best transitional team in the world. Which is it kind of feels like that's what Forest have become. It's that thing of being incredibly solid, but then having proper quality that can take full advantage. So they're one of those teams you kind of think of certain teams as being enjoyable to watch. I think Forest are actually fun to watch for different reasons. But yeah, I was also slightly disappointed that there was like a Robin Hood reference at the end of Match of the Day, and it sort of goes back to what Jonathan was saying about montages and stuff. Like, we need to move on. There's other things to celebrate about Nottingham, like in these montages. So I'd like, if anything, I'd like that to sort of be thought about a bit more, because like you've got Shane Meadows,
And you're out.
Isn't Lad Baby from Nottingham?
There's about six prominent football journalists from Nottingham.
Who's the number one?
Nick Miller. I don't know. It's just one of those weird quirks. Ali Martin, Guardian's cricket correspondent, he's also a big Forest fan. It's just one of those weird quirks. Like for some reason, there's a load of cricket journalists from Northampton, like loads of Northampton fans in the press box, and Forest are that team in the that punch above their weight in journalistic terms.
I mean, that is Forest's first league win over City since '97. The result guarantees City will finish below 80 points for the first time since 2016-17. Guardiola is now in sort of every game is a final territory. We have 10 games to qualify. We have to win games to qualify, and we have to move on to the next one. I mean, you still, like, in the same way that I think a lot of people sense that Forest would drop away, even perhaps before this weekend, and that might have changed their minds. There is a sense, Johnny, that City will just about get into this top five. Do you share that?
Yeah, and obviously it is almost certainly going to be a top five. And yeah, I think there was basically the assumption, especially when they've been looking like in the last month or so that they're over the worst of it. They're over this kind of horror phase where people were just running straight through them, and they didn't seem to have a clue what to do about it. They got a little bit of solidity to them. They brought in Marmouche, they brought in Kusanov, and they just looked like they turned a corner a little bit. And I think what's become increasingly clear, what was certainly clear on Saturday, is that there is still quite fundamental issues with this team, to the point where we're already thinking, we're looking towards the summer as a sort of a real transitional moment for them. It's whether Guardiola can build this new team. I don't think there's a huge amount of jeopardy left in the rest of their season. I still think they'll qualify fairly comfortably for the top five. I still think they'll canter to the FA Cup, given the teams remaining in the draw. So there isn't actually a huge amount riding on the rest of this season, and that's why I think it's already beginning to feel like a really big summer for them.
Yeah, unless of course they start to slip away, Baz. I mean, and it's not inconceivable because they are fifth, 47 points, but it's incredibly tight going down to probably 10th position and Fulham on 42.
But that was their 9th defeat of the season. I wouldn't necessarily share Johnny's view that they'll canter to the FA Cup, and I think there is quite a bit of jeopardy because there are some very good teams below them who are knocking on the door and ready to pounce. If City do slip up, and all available evidence kind of suggests City will slip up as they did here. They never really looked like winning this game. They only had, I think, one decent chance. Kovac's shot after he pounced on a poor clearance from Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm struggling to think of any others. So, yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion at all that they'll finish in the top five.
And Thomas Tuchel's announcing his squad this week, Noz. Wonder how close Hudson-Odoi... Apparently there's like a 55 long list. You can get a 55 people on a bus, I think, quite easily. But do you think Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi, they must be close, mustn't they?
Yeah, you'd hope so. It's so interesting to see what Tuchel's sort of strategy will be with the team because like you do get certain players who just feel like automatic sort of scribbles into the list. But it'd be great if he'd broaden his horizons a little bit. I mean, one sort of aspect of that in this game is like I kind of wonder what's happened to Phil Foden in terms of sort of like being that automatic start for England, but also City of like when I think of City, I especially when they're at their best, I think of these really skillful number 10 style players like David Silva and Bernardo Silva in his prime, and obviously Foden. But in that team, you had Doku, Foden, and Bernardo Silva, who in theory, and Savinho, who in theory can go past players and beat a man. But there doesn't seem to be any of that spark. And Foden in particular, I kind of wonder, is he just having a bad season, or is it a bit more of a concern because he doesn't seem the same player he was?
There was a minute's applause for Stuart Pearce, who suffered a medical emergency last week while on a flight back from Vegas. They had to land the plane in Canada. Sam Matterface on TalkSport said, I spoke to him yesterday. He was in great spirits. He's not 100%, but he's in the right place in hospital. They're dealing with it. He's disappointed about not being at the game. He was due to be co-coms. He said to me, I've got so much I've had to cancel. Great games. And Mumford and Sons are playing next Wednesday night and I can't go. Look, he comes on the Saturday show I do on TalkSport pretty much whenever he's co-coms. And he's such a great guy. And we sort of get through the football as quickly as we can. And we're like, what's the last gig you went to? And he's always going to some, punk gig with some all over the country. Like it's sort of, he's a really interesting guy and he's great value on air and obviously loved by so many people. So we all wish him well.
I was shocked to learn he was planning on going to Mumford and Sons. I did not think they would be his bag at all.
No, but he's quite open-minded. He's not the music snob that, often appears on this podcast. Like he's open-minded. His roots are in punk. That's for sure. But he can go to the odd musical.
Arguably too open-minded.
Okay. Let's go to Old Trafford. Manchester United 1, Arsenal 1. Terrible first half, better second half. Noz, you were there. We'll get to the protest in a bit, but on the pitch, what did you make of it?
I thought it was surprisingly competitive. I thought United might get a little bit trounced, especially when I saw the midfield and I saw Casemiro. But he's had two competent games in a row, which is amazing. I think it was interesting that Amorim essentially apologised afterwards for playing a low block, and I kind of get that, but I think what the game showed, if anything, I mean, it didn't show much about United because that's not how United want to play, but I think it perhaps showed that Amorim, for all these talk about him being stubborn and sticking to the formation, it showed that he can be practical and he can sort of do what needs to be done, because I think the biggest thing with him isn't so much the formation. People going about the formation, but I don't think that's the big thing that United's players are getting used to. I think it's more the fact that he doesn't want to go for these risky long passes that Bruno's so good at, and the club has always the last few years the club has always depended on these counter attacks. He wants to play slowly. He wants to play out, and he wants to take less risk. And that's, I think United have struggled in that respect because they've not got the players to do that, and they've also not got the players who are used to doing that. But this game, they kind of went against what Amorim would like to do. And I think that, if anything, that showed that he's not quite as stubborn as people think. But no, it was an entertaining game. United probably should have won, apart from an amazing performance by the goalkeeper.
Yeah, he was brilliant, David Raya, wasn't he, Baz? I mean, the free kick may be questionable. Obviously, there was the huge controversy over the 11-yard wall, and it's a great free kick from Bruno. But after that, the save from Mazraoui's very instinctive, and the one in injury time as well, so good from Raya.
Yeah, I think he probably was at fault for the goal, and obviously the wall was 11.2 metres max.
Got it.
Let's get this right. But he pulled off a couple of sensational saves. That double save from Bruno, where the ball looked like it was going to be spinning in anyway, or else...
Hoyland, I think. Is Hoyland coming in?
Who was following up? Hoyland was following up. Yeah, he might have headed that over the bar. Superb from Raya. I think Manchester United probably should have won, and it was an odd game insofar as it was fairly inconsequential for both teams. But if either of them lost, you felt a lot would have been read into it, because anytime Arsenal lose a game, their fans read often far too much into it. And if United lost, it would have been another example of their plunge into crisis. But I think we saw that some of Amorim's ideas and his philosophy are beginning to be absorbed by osmosis by his players. The Dalot cross to Mazraoui, that was another great save from Raya. And yeah, I think in recent games we're starting to see flickers of something from Manchester United. And I think they will be disappointed they didn't win that game.
3 without a win for Arsenal, Johnny. What did you make of their performance? And their, obviously they'd had a brilliant win against PSV, but this looked more like that, struggling to create openings Arsenal that we've seen in the Premier League recently.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking about predictability, right? And apart from the fact that they're playing a central midfielder up front, you kind of, apart from that, we all sort of know what we're getting from Arsenal. I thought they showed quite a lot of character. I mean, it's very easily a game they could have lost. I think Declan Rice makes a brilliant challenge quite late. Yeah. There's an amazing tackle, and obviously has to celebrate it because you have to celebrate a tackle these days. And also, I do hold Arsenal kind of responsible for the whole Wall fiasco, because as a professional footballer, you should know what 10 yards feels like, right? I don't understand if they think the Wall's too far back, why they're not shuffling forward or complaining about it. As a Wall, you should be shuffling, and as a free kick taker, you should be trying to move the ball back. That's just how it works. That's how you should be trying to gain an edge there. That's the only way it's ever going to work. Because I think a lot of the bleating about this is obviously feeds into all the conspiracy stuff. I know, like, Barry's basically spent the entire week arguing with Arsenal fans on Blue Sky about referees. So we don't want to open all that up again. But yeah, I think
it doesn't. Anthony Taylor hold some responsibility for marching the back 11 yards. Like, I can see what you mean.
And to be fair, I think a couple of them did complain.
Yeah, well, you should be shuffling. Because the alternative, I think what we don't want is this kind of technocratic hellscape where every single thing is going to be measured out and endlessly litigated and argued, where every throw in has to be the worst refereeing intervention is where the ref sends a throw in but has to be retaken because we don't want any of that. Sort it out on the pitch. It's the only way this is ever going to work.
I love the idea of now Anthony Taylor being really paranoid about his stride, about his gait, sort of like just wondering, is this too long?
He'll have one of those. He'll bring up one of those wheels when he'll roll that along.
I did find it slightly strange the way that Sky were really trying to push that sort of where the Wall was, because it kind of, they noticed it, obviously, and it was a valid point, but even like speaking to Declan Rice afterward, it was almost as if the report was trying to goad him into saying it, and like he said, what do you think about the Wall? And like Declan Rice was like, yeah, we should have jumped, we really should have jumped. And he was like, was there anything else? And he's like, yeah, we should. And it was like, what about being far away? And then it finally sort of like the penny dropped with Declan Rice. He was like, yeah, we did actually think that. And he was like, did you? It was just, but just on Declan Rice. One thing that I found a little bit strange on social media is there was no criticism of him celebrating that tackle, but there was criticism of him celebrating his goal, almost as if like he celebrated it too much because it didn't matter because Arsenal are X amount of points away from Liverpool. So I found that a little bit strange.
Yeah, celebration, please. They are at Arsenal. It was a brilliant finish from Rice, actually, wasn't he? I mean, he caught it absolutely perfectly. Off the pitch, Kobbie Mainoo will unwin with an exclusive in the paper saying he's considering rejecting the offer of a new contract, seeking a move abroad. He's valued about 70 million. And before the game, thousands of Manchester United fans protested at the club's ownership. Chris Hames of the 1958 group that organised the protest said Jim Ratcliffe's being tainted by his association with the Glazer family. So Jim has to make some tough decisions, but he seems to be a shield for the Glazers at the moment. It seems to be a real issue. He had one chance to make a good impression. I'm not sure that's what he has done. This has nothing to do with the football, and it hasn't been for 20 years. The way the Glazers bought the club has been a burden on our backs for 20 years. Jim Ratcliffe has been making people redundant, but United also paid £37 million to the Glazer debt. The solution is the Glazers leave the club. Jim Ratcliffe will never seal his legacy at the club unless he removes the Glazers. It's as simple as that. Nels, do you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I am glad that the focus was on the Glazers, because getting the Glazers out is absolutely imperative, and that should be the thing that people focus on. And if there's too many sort of requests, or there's too many sort of strands of a protest, I think that's when it can lose its power. But it's a strange situation, because obviously the very fact that as a minority shareholder, Ineos and Ratcliffe are pumping their own money in, but also making plans about a new stadium and going beyond the remit of their sort of sporting sort of aspect of it, of what they're meant to control, suggests that they don't want to be a minority shareholder forever. But because of the rules of like the stock exchange and all that, first of all, they can't really criticize the Glazers because they are in partnership with the Glazers and they want the Glazers to sell to them. And second of all, if the plan is to have a full takeover, they can't really say that at the moment. And I think that's what the fans would love to hear, and that's what 1958 and all these organisations would love to hear, is that there is a plan. We're going to get the Glazers out. This is how we're going to do it. But they can't actually say that yet. So reading between the lines, you'd assume that that's definitely what Ineos want to do, but they just can't say it.
All right, that'll do for part one. Part two will begin at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Spurs 2, Bournemouth 2. Johnny, how on earth did Bournemouth not win this game?
I have no idea. I have no idea at all. I mean, right from the start, it all kind of...
Amazing.
It's like literally, I think Romero's gives it away with almost his first touch. Evan Nielsen has a shot, and then I think it's Basuma gives it away. Clive has a shot, and then I mean, for like 60 minutes, Spurs just look haunted. They just like poor haunted boys who've gone to the front line in 1918, like seen horrors. All their friends are dead, and the ones that haven't, that aren't dead are just kind of gone mad, walking around in a sort of daze. And they've basically forgotten how to pass the ball at this point. Bournemouth are incredible. I think we've talked about Bournemouth on this pod. So so often, Evan Nielsen comes in and scores. Kirkes is incredible. And I think Iraola talked afterwards about how they had the chances to kill the game off, and just they needed to be a little bit more clinical, and that's how Bournemouth are going to progress to the next level. Being able to recognise when games are there for the taking, and that's the sort of thing that comes with experience, I guess, and just playing more at this level. But yeah, Spurs did kind of nick that at the end. I think Son was quite smart to win that penalty. I think it was a very smartly won penalty. He almost kind of stops and induces the contact from Kepa, and then it's not Kepa's. It's just not Kepa's day, is it? I think Sarr means it. I think Sarr has a little look and goes, "That's Kepa, isn't it?"
I've watched a lot of Pep Sarr this season. I just don't think. I don't think so. I'm not sure. I mean, Christian Romero has been out for so long, Barry, that everyone started to think he was Franco Baresi. And it did look like this might be the first ever game of football he'd ever played for 5 minutes.
Yeah, he had a shocking start. I think he was culpable for the first two chances that Bournemouth spurned. He is a good defender, but he certainly has mistakes in him. We've seen that before, and he can be, in terms of temperament, a bit of a liability as well. But I'm prepared to give him these ones on the grounds that he was ring rusty and that Bournemouth's press was ferocious and really well organised and disciplined and diligent and clever. When Bournemouth were 1-0 up, the goal they had disallowed, I was so sad that I think it was Evan Nielsen straight offside.
No, I think Semenyo was coming
was
back from offside position, I think, yeah.
That would have been just one of the goals of the season, I think. The way Tavernier, he picked up the ball in his own penalty area, skips around Bergvall, glides past Porro, plays a give and go with Semenyo, which shakes off another two Spurs players, and then plays the ball for it. It was just sensational, and the speed and accuracy of the passing. I was really sad that goal was ruled out, but it was correctly ruled out ultimately. And you ask how on earth did Bournemouth not win this game? They didn't win this game because Papi Sarr had a cross that went in, a mishit cross, and then Kepa was an idiot because there was no need to make that go for that ball when Son was chasing it down.
And actually, both their goals, Bournemouth's goals, like the run from Kirkes, I mean, obviously Tottenham just gave it to him, is so good. And the second one, just Kluivert's movement, the finish from Evan Nielsen. I think what's difficult for Ange is that's the kind of football that I think he's promised Tottenham will play. And Tottenham fans are watching another team, who have cost significantly less, do it right in front of them.
Yeah, it's one of those games where, do you remember in the 90s when English teams were allowed back in Europe and they played these European teams, and you just thought, like, this is a different style of football. Like, this is not something we can cope with at the moment, and it felt so alien and so impossible to compete against. That's kind of what this game felt like. It felt as if Spurs were like a 90s Premier League team, and Bournemouth were like this really silky Portuguese club or something. It's the thing with Bournemouth is every time I watch them, I'm like, I really enjoy it and I love it, but it's always tinged with sadness because it feels like one of these teams, and you sometimes get it. I think Monaco had a team recently, Porto, Udinese had an amazing team where you enjoy them so much, and yet that they're kind of probably going to get broken up, and you really don't want that because Kirkes, like, what a player, and the way they combine is so beautiful, and the way they chase down together is so beautiful that you kind of worry that is this team going to exist next year.
Yeah, and I mean, so many of their players, we've talked about them a lot, like Lewis Cook is playing so well, Ryan Christie is playing so well, just so many of them really stepping up, and they look like they have a plan. You could just see the reaction from Tottenham fans was telling. There was one moment where Vicario went long because he just had to, and the crowd just erupted. They were just so excited to see him not just play a ball behind a centre back. And actually, Johnny, like Spurs, much like Manchester United, their whole season rests on Thursday. They lost at Alkmaar, and they were absolute garbage in this game. And a game where Ange has been saying we're getting our players back. This is key. And they just didn't show up at all on Thursday. So the pressure, I don't know if you think if they don't get through, he goes, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised. Personally, I think you just have to give him the season because the players look like the players have basically played 3 seasons this season. They all look they just look terrified. They look terrified. They look haunted. They look like they've been through some horrible things together. And I think you just have to, maybe they get through on Thursday night, maybe they don't. There's been kind of a weird atmosphere at Spurs recently for obvious reasons. But I just don't think another, hasty mid-season sacking and just junking a squad that you've been building over the last couple of years, just when injuries are starting to clear up and when you've got a little bit of time to train the players. I think you see how the season pans out, whether you do see the uptick in performances. We've all been told through the winter that we should be expecting once they get players back. Yeah, and then we can sort of, we can litigate what happened this season, because it has been just a totally, like, a kind of a traumatic season, I think, for a lot of Spurs fans. Did you see, by the way, after the game, Romero thanked the Argentina medical staff for getting him back to full fitness, but not Tottenham's? He said, thanks to the Argentinian FA for helping me get back to fitness.
Oh, really?
So, just one for the narrative merchants there to chew on.
Talking of narrative, like, having said all that, and I love Jonathan's Wilfred Owen style imagery of what's going on at Spurs. Like, it would be the funniest thing ever if they somehow stumbled into Champions League by winning the Europa.
I think every Tottenham fan thinks that if Tottenham stumble to the Europa League final, Manchester United will also stumble to the Europa League final. And there is no way in that game that Tottenham win it. Like, there's just no way. Like, just history, everything. Man United can just win a cup. They've been shit for so long and they keep winning things. Tottenham, whether they're good or shit, don't win things. So anyway,
because it's Spurs, Højlund will score his first goal in like 56 games.
Exactly. yeah, exactly. Let's go to Anfield. Liverpool 3, Southampton 1. Liverpool now 15 points clear in some incredibly generous pre-match press conferencing. Arne Slot said that Liverpool had prepared the same way as the PSG game because both sides line up the same way off the ball. And look, Barry, we had a tiny bit of jeopardy, didn't we? Southampton 1-0 up at half-time. Nice finish from Will Smallbone. And Liverpool needed a couple of soft, if correct, penalty calls, but, the jeopardy did not last long.
No, that's the third time Southampton have played Liverpool this season, and the other two were probably two of their best performances of the season. They lost both games, but didn't disgrace themselves by any means. I don't think they disgraced themselves here either, but the result was never really in any doubt. When I clocked that the score was 1-0 to Southampton at half-time, there isn't a single part of me that thought they'd go on to get anything from the game. And so it came to pass. Sugawara handball for the penalty was unnecessary, as he was trying to shield the ball from Luis Diaz. And Smallbone undid his good work with a clumsy challenge on Darwin Núñez to give away the first penalty. Núñez scored, which will do him no end, his confidence no end of good. So Liverpool were really, really bad in the first half and were punished and got a rocket from Arne Slot at half time, and then upped their game considerably in the second and ran out easy winners.
How much are you looking forward to the PSG game, Johnny?
Oh, yeah, I'm going up tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic occasion, especially now that Liverpool have basically won the league. They've had their kind of, the league winning jeopardy is over, and so there's just this huge amount of emotion being poured into. I mean, last week was I didn't see a minute of that live because I was at Bayern, but just reliving it. It was just a fantastic occasion. It's a great storyline. One of those classic games in which you are besieged and you have no right to win, and yet somehow some kind of institutional memory, some collective resolve pulls you through. And then, I mean, I just liked how Alisson played basically one of the greatest games we've seen from a goalkeeper in midweek, and then at the weekend he fluffs a clearance in his own 6-yard box and gets nutmegged by Will Smallbone. I love that so much. It's just one of those games that brings you. I was trying to think of like an artistic parallel for this, and it's basically like side 1 of Abbey Road, where the Beatles do something. Track 2, it's one of the greatest love songs of all time, and they follow it with Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which is probably not even the best song about a silver hammer. So yeah, that's just one of those one of those ways that the game cuts you down to size.
At Stamford Bridge, Chelsea beat Leicester 1-0. Nos Cole Palmer probably the main talking point from this game. He had his penalty. I mean, I thought quite brilliantly saved. Fluffed a really good chance in the second half. Because he's so languid, and so chilled out about everything. You can't really say, well, he doesn't look up for it, because he never looks up for it, even when he's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the strange thing about, he didn't have a good day, but the strange thing about Cole Palmer is I think people, he's almost, and I don't mean this in the way it sounds, he's almost like an empty vessel that people imbue with all these values and things, because there's this feeling that he's thick because of the way he communicates, and he's not. On Blue Sky, I did ask the question, probably unfairly, like, is there a thicker football than Diogo Dalot? I meant that on the pitch, not outside of it. And loads of people said Cole Palmer, and I was like, is that just because the way he talks? Is that his Stockport accent? Is it the fact that his favourite sandwich is jam? But yeah, I think there's levels to him. I think there's layers to him, and I kind of like the fact that he was annoyed and showed it. You kind of want that in a player, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be the best player in a Chelsea team that bob along near the top. He wants to win stuff. So I thought that was actually a really positive thing.
Maresca was not delighted with the Chelsea fans, Barry. The atmosphere apparently is pretty flat. He said, "We need our fans. I said it on my Instagram 2 days ago. I don't actually follow Enzo Maresca, but maybe I will. We need them behind the players because the spirit they showed today was fantastic. I completely understand when there's a negative feeling, but how many chances did we create in the first half? If you think football is just PlayStation and you win easy, no way. Every game is difficult."
The atmosphere in Premier League grounds tends to be fairly flat, and I guess if Maresca wants to get the fans out of their seats or have a better atmosphere, he should ask his employers to reduce ticket prices, or ask his players to give them something to get excited about. It wasn't a particularly good performance from them, I thought it was one of Leicester's better performances, and they still lost. Ruud van Nistelrooy switched to 5 at the back. But yeah, there are many, many reasons why the atmosphere of Premier League grounds isn't as good as in many foreign leagues, and I would say expensive ticket prices is the main one.
And I would say this goes back to what we were saying about Palmer, because I think obviously a lot of focus has been on him, but it's other players who haven't been stepping up as well. Sancho hasn't scored in about 15. Neto's scored, I think, twice in 4 months. Kunku has scored 3 all season. And these are the players who need to be stepping up, because Palmer's underlying numbers are still very good. He's still getting chances, still getting touches in the box. But it seems to be a collective dysfunction, and that is on Maresca.
I think it is worth mentioning that Maresca said after the game Palmer was ill.
Yes.
And his participation in the game had been in doubt, but he wanted to play.
Leicester Southampton this weekend. Ricardo asks if it's possible for both teams to lose in one match. It'd be exciting to see that basement battle. But, Leicester same points as Ipswich. It feels so wrong to me. It feels like Ipswich should be about 20 points ahead of Leicester. But the table doesn't lie, everybody. Right, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll begin at Brighton. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Brighton 2, Fulham 1. Brilliant win for Brighton. They're up to 6th. 6 wins in all competitions since that 7-0 drubbing at Forest. All down to Harrison Reed just being a little bit eager in injury time, Noz. Obviously, he shouldn't have kicked João Pedro, but I felt sorry for him.
But a lot of that is the way he looks. I think he looks like an Enid Blyton character. So he looks so confused, and I thought, well, you did do that, so you kind of deserve the penalty. But no, I think it was a great game, and you talk about Southampton versus Leicester as like a basement sort of challenge, and who can win that game. But Brighton and Fulham feel like the two clubs in the table who are the barometer. They are really good teams, and they will find you out if you're not quite on par. So it was interesting to see them both play against each other, and it was a great game. I particularly enjoyed Jimenez's goal because
brilliant,
great finish, but also it would be great if he's now back to his best, because like if you remember when he was at Wolves, like everyone wanted him. He was linked to Liverpool. He was linked to Manchester United, and he's such a rounded striker at his best. And also like he seems to, and again, like this isn't a criticism, but he seems to have his bravery back, and he's not playing with that fear of perhaps being injured.
Yeah, his first touch as well, like to chest it and take it away from the defenders. And the run from Iwobi was brilliant as well. I mean, Marco Silva will be pretty furious about the equaliser, Baz, because it's a great header, but where's the Fulham team for that free kick?
It was extraordinary because Jan-Paul van Heck, was it a free kick, came in, and he just had the freedom of the penalty area. There was nobody near him, but it was a tremendous header off the post, across the face of goal, and he seemed, it was like a golf shot nearly. Is it fade or draw? I can never remember which is which, but to send it across the face of goal and in off the post, really good.
Look, well done to Brighton. Of those teams, Johnny, like if you look at it now, so you've got Forest are third, 51 points. Chelsea have 49, Man City 47, Brighton 46. Villa we'll get to in just a second on 45. Bournemouth 44, Newcastle 44, Fulham 42. It's very hard to pick who you think will end up in that top 5. But of the ones that don't often make it into the Champions League or never do, who do you think might have the best shot, excluding Forest, who we think will do well, will stay there?
I'd love to see Bournemouth or Brighton in the Champions League. I think those two, as well as Forest, have been just the standout teams this season for the way they. I mean, I saw it's a couple of midweeks ago. I saw Brighton against Bournemouth. It was the Tuesday night game, and it was like watching football from the future. It was honestly one of the greatest games of the season, just because like lots of incredibly gifted players doing like quite strange and quirky but brilliant things, like just lingering on the ball for about 12 seconds. It felt like Hurtler and Areola are two of those coaches who have. I don't know, they've managed to intuit football on a slightly different level to the rest of us. And it was one of those games, I mean, I want to actually write about it at some point, because it was one of those games that I think showed us where we're going. So whether that gets them into the top 5, I don't know. I still think Manchester City are going to claim that 5th spot, or possibly even higher. And then I think Forest will make it. And then I think it's about whether Chelsea can hang on, and whether Brighton can overtake them, or whether someone like Bournemouth can put on a run.
Do you think that, and we've sort of touched on this before, I think Barney was saying, it's kind of easier to run a club the size of Brighton and Bournemouth than it is in Manchester United or perhaps at Tottenham. But do you think it's easier just to coach those players that are just a bit cheaper? That doesn't mean they're not as good, but just a bit, you might just have a sort of humility level within that. And I know it's a cliche about, high-profile players having bigger egos, etc. But I just wonder if you can get a sort of team ethos, a club ethos, much more easily if you're the Brighton manager or the Bournemouth manager. Players will do what you want.
I think I interviewed Potter about this at Brighton 2 or 3 years ago, and he was definitely talking about this, about how if you could show a player like Pascal Gross or Tariq Lamptey, you can show them a journey. You can if you can sell them a story of progress and growth, and I'm going to give you minutes. I'm going to look after you, and then you'll get your big, escape hatch move if you perform. And I think that it's a lot easier to sell that kind of story to an aspirant player who's on the way up, who's trying to get, than obviously what happened when he's at Chelsea, and you have 48 multi-billionaires who all want a place in the starting squad, and then you're managing egos essentially. You're not managing athletes. I think there is something in that, because Brighton, I know, do a huge amount of research and insight into the kind of character that they're signing, as well as the analysing their ability and what they can do on the pitch. So I think that's a big part of it. You want someone who can buy into a collective ethos, who isn't going to, have a massive ego or disrupt the harmony that you're trying to create.
And so therefore the best managers are the ones that can do that, but at one of the big clubs. So Pep, what Slot's done, what Klopp has done, because they do seem to have that. They have been able to create that same thing. I always think when we're sort of complaining about Galacticos at PSG not working hard, and then you see how hard like Firmino, Salah and Mane worked for Liverpool under Klopp, or how everyone at City, this season aside, just like didn't stop doing everything that Pep wanted them to do. And then there's got this other level who manage generally Manchester United who are just lost in this sort of like this horrible abyss. Anyway, Villa won at Brentford 1-0. Ollie Watkins with the only goal. A big deflection. A big, as producer Joel says, deflection. Whether that was worth retelling on this, Johnny Lew's head in his hands. So I absolve Mark Flecken for that. I think quite interesting about this game, and we talked about defenders celebrating nods, was Axel Disasi. Really, I mean, he was celebrating absolutely everything, even when he sort of gave away definitely one penalty in my eyes, and I think probably one out of the two. But he really loved doing so. Who's sort of Bonucci levels of celebration.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely should have celebrated when he didn't get sent off for continually giving away penalties. But I actually like him whenever I've seen him at Chelsea. He seemed slightly clumsy, thoughtless at times, but he's done really well at Villa. I mean, I know that's contradicted by the fact he should have given away 2 penalties, but no, he looks really strong, and I won't be surprised if they keep him. The interesting thing for me is of the Villa players that are on loan, which ones they will actually keep, because you'd assume Disasi if Chelsea are open to that. But in terms of forwards, personally, obviously I've got a vested interest, but I kind of wonder whether Rashford is doing enough. And I know he's got a lot of praise, and he's had a few assists, but I wonder whether that's enough for them to spend 40 million on him, especially seeing as he doesn't automatically start for them every week.
Villa scored a second straight after the first, Baz, which was disallowed for offside. And since our discussion about Arsene Wenger torso offsides, I now have to check if the goal would have been allowed under the Wenger system. And I think this one would have been, because the torso of, I forget who, was it Morgan? Was Ollie Watkins was onside before he set up Morgan Rogers. Are you doing the same thing?
Yeah, I think his torso was onside and his kneecap, his patella wasn't, and which is a bit of a shame because it was a good goal. This was an interesting game in that it was a team who used to be really good at home, but having won in 7 now, I think, at home, Brentford, playing a team whose away form was pretty dismal. So I had it nailed down as a draw, and it probably should have been. I think Brentford were a bit unlucky. As has been pointed out, on another day, they could have had 2 penalties, missed some decent chances, and yeah, it was a good win for Villa, but slightly fortuitous, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how the first penalty. I know Disasi doesn't mean to, but he falls over and just absolutely clears him out, doesn't he, Kevin Jarder? It's a baffling decision. Palace 1, Ipswich 0. The Adam Wharton pass in the first minute, John, is my favourite moment of the weekend. He's such a special player, I think.
It's great to see him back. The pass reminded me of Modric, actually.
Yeah.
Because Modric is one of those. He's got, I think, one of the greatest outsteps that we've ever seen, and being able to pick a pass that basically isn't available in a straight line. Like Nketiah is making the run, and he has to bend it, and because he's under pressure, it has to be the outside of the foot, and it has to go. I think Wharton is one of those players who's still very much potential. He's being tipped for big things, and you see just in little flashes and glimpses what he might be capable of, and it's just so exciting to see a player at that kind of stage in his career where you're still kind of trying to extrapolate what they might end up being. And obviously Tuchel's naming his England squad this week, which is it's quite timely because Wharton is one of those players. I think Andrel Gomez is another. Kobbie Mainoo potentially, even though he hasn't been playing too much, who you sort of need. England haven't had that sort of player at the base of midfield who can just pick up the ball off the defence and move it forward and play, defence splitting passes and just take care of it. I don't think Rice is that sort of player, and it's interesting to see whether Tuchel decides to go for a Wharton kind of player, whether he wants that sort of presence or whether he wants a kind of a more physical, stand there, big man kind of midfielder who will scrap around and be a little bit nasty.
It's a shame Nketiah, who obviously is a bit rusty, hasn't played that much football, didn't score that goal in the same way that João Palhinha didn't score that ridiculous setup from Musiala in midweek. The pass will be forgotten. And we won't be talking about this pass in 5 years' time. I'm convinced of it.
I suspect you will, Max.
Yeah, maybe you're right. And it's might have started us really well, that finish. It's a great thing, isn't it? Look, Ipswich was the only side without a win in 2025. And they just feel like they're sort of okay. Maybe it's like Luton last year. Like they're showing real fight. They seem to be the promoted side that's given it a bit, which means what? They'll get relegated to League One next season, like Luton are at the moment.
Well, I mean, the sort of a flip of that is they. I mean, you're right. It just feels so strange that they're third from bottom and by a margin. Where they every time you see them, they play with intelligence, with intent. I'd really hope that they essentially come straight back up, and hopefully there's every chance. Because I think they are a Premier League club. I think they play in a way that perhaps with a couple more players would have been rewarded with like a comfortable like 13th, 14th position end result. So yeah, they're always interesting to watch. I actually think if you look at like all the teams near the bottom, I'd say Leicester are obviously not good, but Southampton. Again, they're a team where they've only got 9 points, but they do give any team a game, and we saw that against Liverpool, we saw that against Manchester United. So yeah, it's a strange one. You maybe we should extend the Premier League to 22 teams, so like 2 really bad teams, come up, and then at least teams like Ipswich and Southampton can be rewarded for being competent.
Well, I mean, it's the mezzanine that we've come up with, where they go to the mezzanine, these promoted sides, and just sort of sit there, have a fun little 5-team league. just for a few years.
Crossed my mind the other day. I just wonder, do any of the 3 teams in the relegation zone, are any of them or all of them clinging on to the hope that Manchester City might get docked like 1 million points, and that would mean one of them stays up? So are they having their own little fight to finish third from bottom rather than second from bottom?
I mean, we can only speculate. I don't know.
They're not doing a great job of it, really.
No, they aren't.
If they are scrapping for 18th, desperately for 18th place, I'm not sensing a lot of grit and resilience there.
Wolves Everton was on 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, which is no time for Premier League football. You know, the only football that should be on is like La Liga, when you sort of like just are flicking along and go, oh look, Atleti are playing Getafe. Maybe I'll give it 10 minutes.
You're having a pizza and a couple of beers,
Yeah.
and there's some Serie A game. Or
Yeah, exactly.
La Liga.
So look, well, I mean, look, I only saw those highlights. I suspect the same for you guys. I don't know, but the only thing of note I thought, and we talked about Adam Wharton's pass, the Bellegarde pass to Monetti is absolutely, it's like a putt. It's so perfect, and that was the only real highlight I thought of this football match.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good game. I think a draw was probably fair. It was pretty scrappy. That was a moment of quality. Pickford had to make a couple of decent saves, and yeah, it was very Saturday night. I mean, David Moyes said in the build-up to the game, he was asked about the 8 o'clock Saturday night kickoff, and he said, look, I'm normally had a bottle of red by 8 o'clock on a Saturday. he didn't even seem, he was joking, but, well, I don't think he was joking, but he didn't even seem particularly inclined for that time.
I love the way that the one person who was incredibly invested was Cunha, because the camera kept on going to him, and if anything, he looked as if he was ready to punch someone, just for the fact that he'd got himself suspended. So yeah, I think he was the one player who was or one person who was invested in this 8 o'clock kickoff. But yeah, maybe it's the kind of game where it's the kind of time of the weekend where you want your Mumford and Sons rather than your Punk.
Possibly. I just think, I know there are smarter people than me that, you know, work out all the packages for when games take place, and obviously, you know, the Premier League gets loads of money from football, and when it's at 8 p.m, that's a really good time. Certain, you know, countries, like in Australia, that's a really great time for, you know, you wake up, you go, oh, there it is, 8 o'clock kickoff Sunday morning, you can just watch that.
Oh, bloody hell, it's Wolves v Everton, back to bed.
yeah. I mean, there is that. Can we have some that are sacrosanct? I'd still move Europa League to Tuesday, do all the Champions League on a Wednesday, and say Thursday not allowed. I just think that would be really great for all of us. But I don't run the game. Let's finish on this email from Colm, who says, is that how I pronounce it, Barry? C-O-L-M? Colm?
Column.
Thank you, Colm. Colm. Hi, Max, Barry, and the Football Weekly team. I think this is the opposite of the vasectomy me email, as I'm waiting for my wife to give birth to our 3rd child. And as my work is already done, I said I may as well email you lads. As a father to... I'm just trying to think of which point in the... when does that happen? Because, like, you know, like... I feel like your work only increases until the baby arrives. Anyway, as a father to 2 incredibly soon to be 3 kids, my available time to go to or even watch football matches is extremely limited. You lot are the way I consume and keep up to date with all things football, even listening to the same pod more than once in a week. Blimey. You obviously don't know this, but you were there for me in my darkest times when I was recovering from a car accident 4 years ago, where it would take me over half an hour to slowly walk up to a kilometre. You were in my ears. My brother Alan and friend Peter regularly discuss the pod rather than the football in our In and Around Clichés WhatsApp group, where we frequently discuss how the game is going. As Irishmen, we get particular joy from Barry's jubilation when England are knocked out of tournaments and beaten in finals. We sense your relief, Barry. Anyway, gents, I better get back in there and greet the newest Manchester United fan. God knows where penny-pinching Jim will have the club by the time this child understands football. Amateur status may be where he won't need to pay players. Keep up the good work, lads. You help people more than you'll ever know. Appreciate a shout-out to Alan and Peter, as I won't be seeing them for a pint for a while. All the best. Colm in Roscommon. Thank you so much, Colm. I appreciate your email. It's very nice to hear from you. Best of luck with the 3rd kid. That is certainly one more than I'll be having. I can guarantee that. We're discussing, Barry, whether if I do have a vasectomy, whether I should. I think I sort of should broadcast it. You know, I should record it.
Yeah.
for a live show, but then I feel so embarrassed telling the doctors that, trying to explain that I'm not an influence. I'm not doing this as like an influence. So there's like context. But I don't know.
It's your vasectomy, Max. You can do whatever you want.
You're absolutely right.
Can I just say, I feel bad for people of Nottingham. So I've had a quick Google, and there's loads of famous people from Nottingham. There's Vicky McClure, Jake Bugg, Robert Harris.
Yes, of course.
Mr. Jam, who's a DJ. Sue Pollard, Stuart Broad.
Of course.
Carl Froch. Yeah, so
this is terrible. It's a terrible list. It's up your game, Nottingham. This is a major.
What is it, Johnny? What have you got against Nottingham Forest getting into the Champions League? Like every team does saccharine. Look at us, we're in the Champions League.
Well, apart from the fact that they're going to lose 6 of their 8 games. I mean, there's going to be this huge build-up. It's going to be like emotional. They're going to interview John McGovern if he's still alive. I assume he's still alive. They're going to get Martin O'Neill on just to, reminisce, and they're going to lose. They're just going to lose 6 out of 8.
What's the point of football, Johnny? Like, what is the point of it?
This is the point. This is the point. Not next. Next season's going to be bad. This season, great. All in favour of this season.
But I mean, will this change your mind, Jonathan? Jane Sauville.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. All right. Proper like Bolero legend.
Yeah, exactly.
We stand a true Sarajevo legend.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
I
think it's just good. Like, it's always saccharine, isn't it? Apart from teams that are in it every year who are just a bit bored of it. Like, if Bournemouth get there, it will be saccharine in a different way, I guess. But yes. I'm glad we righted the wrongs.
Oh, I'm not sure we have, to be honest. I can see this not ending well for Johnny Liew.
Give them a playoff, right? Just having to commit to this for like 8, possibly 10 games. They might scrape a playoff, and but I think that's a lot of Nottingham Forest in the Champions League, even for Nottingham Forest fans. I think, especially if they go on a bit of a bad run. You've got
Put down the shovel, Johnny.
0-0 against Red Star Belgrade. No. Great. I mean,
I think he loves the digging. This is Liew in his element, isn't it? Anyway, I'll put you. I'll stop you in mid-flow if that's okay.
Terrible football.
Yeah. Oh,
Chris Wood's going to score 3 next season. Just enjoy the moment.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks, Noz.
Thanks.
Cheers, Barry.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back on Wednesday.
This is The Guardian.